So, party peoples out there on YouTube land, this is Roy Carter from Wrecktitution Media. It's been a while since I've done a video or whatnot, but I've been kind of trying to take my distance and find out what's going on with this Commievirus that's been delivered to us for the wonderful people's fucking party of, of China. And it's kind of interesting because I'm seeing the media here not like do everything they can, and also on Google, to silence content creators and independent media researchers and doctors and scientists out there that are actually blowing the whistle on this, that this was a biological strain that was definitely made with a gain of function. So for some reason we're seeing just this big, like, oh, nothing to see here, this big blown out of proportion kind of response to it. Well, the media won't say that it's an engineered virus, but yet they're making it out as if it's the next Black Plague. You know, like it's crazy how much just the fear mongering is. Like, they've never shut down any of the to the extent that they've done now. But it's kind of funny how, like, the media is not even like questioning China's, you know, like claims that everything's fine, that they're all back to business. Nothing to see here, American. Yes, everything fine. I think it's because they haven't checked the people that they, you know, welded into their apartments to, you know, die and fend for themselves. It's probably like, oh, there's no infected here, because that's pretty much because everybody who's lived in an apartment complex in Wuhan is probably already fucking dead now. So that's wonderful. So we've got our wonderful Western media. Remember back in the day when they had the whole communism versus democracy thing going on in the Cold War, and they had Tiananmen Square. They just had one Asian guy that stood up to those tanks, and that was like this giant thing in the Western media as like this huge stand against communist dictatorship. And yet they've like practically disappeared any kind of journalist in that country that is tried to shine a light on this or ask some real fucking questions. No, that they're all fucking put on some like concentration camp where they're probably already fucking dead, because that's what they do to their dissidents there. His probably organs is in some rich fucking New York stock speculators kidneys right now. Is probably that's where that journalist's organs have probably gone to now. So, I mean, I'm so fucking sick and tired of this media fucking scare trying to tell everybody to panic and whatnot, and they're using it as this Orwellian freaking control system now, where they got to shut down everything, where, you know, the government mandates what you can, what you can't do. I mean, we're already at a point now where the economy's taken a huge hit. It just so happens, 2016, it's the re-election year of fucking Trump, and all of a sudden this Wuhan virus comes and fucking wipes out the economy that he's done so well, you know, to try to maintain this bullshit failing petrodollar that's already a fucking stone's throw from falling to the fucking depression era kind of measures anyways. You know, this is ridiculous. And so I think it's kind of funny. I think a lot of people, I mean, I for the longest time, I supported Trump. I have like a Trump 2020 shirt that I bought from InfoWars and whatnot. I think he's 10 times better of a leader than our soy boy pussy fucking Trudeau up here. I mean, let's be honest. If Trump, like I said before in many videos, if Trump did half the fucking shit that Trudeau did, like if Trump did blackface once in his fucking, like, drunken at some stupid party way back in the day and there was a picture of it, he would have been impeached a long fucking time ago in public opinion. Yet we got Trudeau, who can fucking have 3 ethics violations and needs to do all these fucking, I'm going to be so transparent when you elect me. And then, like, he's the least transparent prime minister. Like, he makes fucking Harper look like a like he's, you know, I mean, come on. We took pretty much the authoritarian's side of the left and the fucking right here in Canada. Like, people are so stupid, Canadians. They think it's either the you know, blue or red. It's like they're all a bunch of smarties. You think they're fucking different colors on the outside, but they're brown on the inside. That's our fucking Canadian politics. But anyways, what kind of pisses me off about this is the fact that I've looked into the other side of the argument. There's people like Mike Adams. There's people like Professor Francis Boyle. There's many other, like Stefan Molyneux was talking, had a great, has been covering the coronavirus outbreak with different updates and stuff like that with other health professionals that have been blowing the whistle on this. And there is some concern, the fact that this virus might actually have a bit of lethality, because this is like the first time, and the media won't tell you this, and I think it's kind of interesting because they're completely fucking useless if they don't tell you that it's man-made. You know, at least you know, some Reuters, AP are kind of, you know, exploring the possibility of the fact that, you know, it just so happens to be coincidental that their fucking biological 4 containment lab was only like 900 fucking feet away from this like supposed market where all this, like, you know, even though it's got like 4 different types of RNA fucking sequencing strands, you know, like welded into the freaking the freaking viral cell. You know, it's pretty fucking interesting that they're trying to make it people believe, or anyone in the scientific profession or biological profession, that this could be zoological in nature and naturally occurring. You know, maybe 1 or 2 sequencing, but not 3 or 4 in a fucking, you know, so this is ridiculous. And it's funny how you know, like there's an Indian researchers that came out and you know, they sounded the alarm on it. But the problem is that they get their government funding from, you know, from the same sources that, like, it's funny because every time I'm looking at like a coronavirus vid here in Canada, they have some stupid fucking little warning underneath it being like, oh, come here for the official. This is the truth. You know, like, what these people are saying in this video, you know, is probably untrue. You know, the millions and billions they're spending on trying to silence any kind of fucking dissenting information out there that might ask any other questions. You know, and that's the thing. You know, having an open, like these kind of scenarios, the reason why you're supposed to have like open scientific debate is so that we can find out whether or not, you know, there's things about this virus or different, you know, aspects to it that we can like understand or figure out more, or that, you know, the more that they're obfuscating the fact that this is, you know, a man-made biological thing. And I think that might actually kind of maybe like scare people a little bit more, because there is a possibility of this like pinballing effect of reinfection rates. Apparently there's like a 13 or 14% reinfection rate on this, and that's a very fucking scary thing. And apparently there's also other mentions of the fact that it could cause fertility problems in men. Apparently it's been like after the virus, it has the potential of hurting certain organs, of targeting different like mutations and stuff like that. There's like 35 different mutations, they were saying. So, and there's like 2 main like strains of this, one being a very deadly version, the Wuhan, and another version that's going like that's making its own kind of like cousin RNA sequencing in Italy and different parts of the world, and South Korea has a different version. So, you know, the fact that this is mutating, and who knows, maybe the you know, doctors, it's mostly the people who are being completely silenced from the internet right now that are trying to raise the alarm on it. And there's a lot of actual prominent professors and doctors out there and scientists that are trying to raise the alarm on this, but that the media is not giving them any access, not giving them, you know, any kind of publicity to at least make their argument. And that is a very dangerous thing. And that's where I'm starting to see that this whole kind of orchestrated little, you know, fear-mongering 24/7, you know, the news is finally relevant again, you know, apparently, because people are watching them in panic, because they're using fear to mass manipulate the minds of the public, and that's how it's always been done. That is how they make people fucking scared, and that's how you get people to clutch their pearls, think of the children, and use the oldest argument that they used against Socrates, against like polluting the minds of the establishment, you know, of the children against the establishment, or, you know, coming up with you know, questioning, you know, exactly what's going on behind the curtain here, you know, so when you act like Toto and you pull it back with your fucking teeth, you know, and the rest of the world sees it, you know, it's kind of interesting how much the media tries to stop that from happening, or they try to control the situation. You know, I think it's kind of interesting how the media is not even talking about the origins of this, or you know, like asking the proper questions. No, all they're doing is just putting a little ticker thing for the death toll on the bottom there, and playing it off. Oh no, we got another case here. Oh no, we got another case here. You know, they had people on from the Princess Cruise Lines, and they didn't even ask them, like, oh, how bad, what was the severity of the flu? Like, basic questions that anybody who, you know, if you were talking to somebody who just had, apparently, like, the new Black Plague, the new in vogue flu, you know, you think you would at least ask them, well, I'm sure you've had flu before in your life. How do you compare that on a level of 1 to 10? And there's a lot of people that are becoming asymptomatic, but also in other countries and third world countries where they don't have the necessary like healthcare quality that they do have in the West. I'm seeing reports of people mass graves in Iran, and it like hitting like huge populations there pretty hard. So maybe the 3/4 percentage of the population of this being fatal to is more increased in those kind of those nations where they either have unfortunately unfettered immigration. I mean, take Italy for example. Italy is completely as soon as they took Salvini out, it became a leftist open borders freaking hellhole. And you kind of caused it yourself there by letting so many people in from different countries that were already immunocompromised to begin with, having no actual way to deal with the diseases that they're bringing in. I mean, they've had drug-resistant tuberculosis that's making a comeback now because of all of the wonderful freaking asylum seekers that they're not properly screening. I mean, hey, I have no problem with people if they're legitimately coming here for asylum seeking, or if they're actually if they have something to offer. But, just flooding a country with mass migration when you have people coming from countries where there's all kinds of different illnesses, and then not properly screening that, and then you wonder why there's a fucking outbreak? Well, gee, Russia closed their borders as soon as this thing happened, and they've had maybe a handful of freaking cases, and they're right next door. They're doing fine. They're not running to the freaking grocery store being fucking idiots buying every fucking toilet paper roll they can see. No, they're smart. They're not fucking stupid. They know exactly what's going on. And it just so happens that a lot of people are calling this bullshit, the timing of this. Just before the fucking Wuhan outbreak happened, they had this giant event with John Hopkins and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation called Event 201. And I actually was paying attention to this. I knew about it a week after the event happened. It was an online conference and an in-person conference in New York where they started talking about exactly the same situation that we're experiencing now, 8 weeks before the fucking outbreak happens. And it just so happens that Wuhan, the Bio4 facilities, just happened to have a nice little 2 weeks before the virus got out. They had a little exercise in China about a possible, breach of containment and stuff like that. I'm sure that had nothing to do with the fact that the virus actually got out from there. They're trying to make us think that at first the official thing was bat soup and snake soup, and then all of a sudden, the rest of the world was like, oh wow, that's pretty fucked up that people are eating shitty animals that are full of diseases and stuff like that shouldn't be considered food. But who cares about that, right? You're just racist for saying that cultural practices are abhorrent, and lead to kind of disease outbreaks and stuff like that. But it's interesting because as soon as scientists and doctors noticed that there was something going on there, what did the Chinese government do? They'd be like, oh shit, this might actually be something serious. And I mean, the funny thing about it too is that they've actually, the Chinese government has actively bought strains of weaponized viral strains from University of North Carolina, from the weapons manufacturing program there, from their little I guess Francis Boyle, he talks about the entire history of Operation Paperclip and the medical experimentation that they used to do, and how they brought all the information from the unit that they had in Japan that did all kinds of biological weapons research and torture on Chinese fucking people who they captured for prisoners of war, and all the horrible medical procedures that they did there. They ended up just taking it all and then being like, hey, maybe we should start making these horrible biological weapons that don't exist in nature, for one, just so that we can say we have them. It just became like having a bunch of nukes because one fucking idiot may have a nuke and go crazy and fucking set him off and start the end of the world. It's we don't hear this huge backlash in the media of maybe we should start shutting down or taking a stronger look at these fucking medical facilities that are weaponizing viruses that could kill the entire fucking world's population, or mutate to kill the world's population many times fucking over. No fucking question of that. No questions about the fact that this was irresponsible fucking from the Chinese government. I'm sorry, but if you're going to have a biological weapons manufacturing facility, you may why aren't we talking about removing China's fucking rights to weaponize biological weapons because of the fact that they can't fucking control their shit, or like, here they were for months telling us all that they had it all under fucking control while they were fucking, like, everybody else was getting it, and then, they're coming around saying, oh, we did everything we can. And now they're giving out, like a little bit of fucking medical supplies to some countries and being like, oh, we're the heroes now, trying to fucking turn it around when they're the ones that leased it on us in the fucking first place? Bullshit. Fucking bullshit. Where's the Canadian freaking Prime Minister? Of course, because he's praised China on so many different fucking occasions. We got Huawei executive, like our Canadian media, it took him a month before they even suggested that she might be spying on us, but God forbid, we say anything bad about fucking Huawei, because, the commercial goes to after CTV and CBC and Global with this nice little fancy little camera thing and these, like, like colorful little camera ads to, like, get people to buy their shitty cell phones that fucking spy on you. So, I mean, where are we in Canada? Like, why should I be proud to be a Canadian when all we do is fucking roll over for the fucking globalists and let the taxpayers get fucked up the ass with no fucking lubrication whatsoever? At least take us out to fucking dinner. At least fucking protect our veterans. At least protect our fucking, our citizens. I don't give a shit if they come from other countries or whatnot, as they're Canadian citizens. But at the same time, why are we bringing in fucking people that now they've got up to 20 fucking years of free healthcare when I've been on a waiting list for 8 fucking years? It took me 2.5 years to see a back specialist, only for him to tell me that because of our wonderful ration fucking healthcare here in Canada, that I'm pretty much fucked for the rest of my life and I might as well get used to the fucking daily pain. But that's okay because we're bringing in fucking people. We're closing the goddamn borders. We're not letting people go to the fucking restaurants to eat, but yet they're bringing in people from fucking the States that are coming in with Gucci bags when our RCMP are being used as glorified fucking bellhops. Where's the fucking justice for Canada? Where's the representation from the taxation that we're getting fucked over by the government? No, they're just going to keep bailing us out. They're going to keep taking more taxpayer money, which they don't fucking have, the money that Trudeau's fucking sent around the world, billions that he spent on other fucking people and other fucking bullshit fucking globalist projects that have nothing to do with fucking Canadians or any of the fucking people that actually pay into this fucking system, but yet we're supposed to fucking take it and be fucking, you're overreacting. It's like, I'm sorry, but if I'm getting fucking robbed and my family's getting fucking raped, I'm gonna fucking speak up about it. I'm fucking sick of this shit. I mean, they try to put me in a fucking quarantine fucking thing. I found out I was getting pretty pissed off because I was about ready to fucking tell if anybody tries to come here and tell me that I got a quarantine, I'll tell them right fucking off. I mean, my mom just right now is waiting for test results back. I mean, like, if she gets back, then I know the entire fucking house is probably fucking infected with the Commievirus. Thanks, China. Why aren't they getting asked to fucking pay for everything? They're the ones that unleash this fucking havoc onto the fucking world. And it's still not as bad as the kill rates as influenza, but I mean, the thing about this is that it's man-made and it has the potential to fucking mutate and do some serious damage. But I mean, there's two different camps out there in the alternative media. There's people that are looking at it like, this is a not as bad as the flu ultimately, and that it's being used as more of an authoritarian reach for power, and playing on that whole kind of Socrates out there trying to corrupt the mind of the children, the whole freedom versus security argument, which is always used time and time again to control populations and to get public opinion to go a certain way. So, but then there's also the other people out there too who are saying that this has the potential of actually being something very serious. Now, if you take like the Princess cruise liner as a it had plenty of time for incubation, and out of that whole cruise line, there wasn't a whole lot of people that got killed from it. It was actually a very low percentage. So, it's a good test case to look at it from there, because even though they didn't have like the best Western medical facilities, because there were actually people that have whistleblowers that have came out and said that the way that they handled the quarantine from the Princess Cruise Line was just abhorrent. It was completely not the way that you're supposed to do a proper quarantine. In fact, they let people off the ship. They went onto a plane, and they were allowed to fly back to their countries in the same plane with uninfected people. And all they did in the plane to separate the people who they assumed might actually be infected, or possibly because this, they could be in their system for anywhere up to a week to 2 weeks before they show any signs of being sick. They put them on the same plane, and they just put a little plastic barrier in between half the plane. And I mean, anybody who has any fucking common sense or brains knows that the air on a plane is circulated. That's like way back in the day when they had smokers. Even if they put smokers in the back of the plane, people up front would smell it, a little bit of tobacco in the air, because it's circulated through the system. So I mean, it just goes to show you how fucking stupid and just how much of a joke the media is, and how much of a facade this is, the way that the government's responses to it, because they're stopping travelers, but they're not stopping the illegal asylum, people that are crawling over through Roxham Road. They're not stopping the asylum seekers, and they're doing everything they can to keep that migrant compact UN agenda going with freaking the liberals and whatnot. And to be honest with you, I mean, way back in the day, I thought all this shit was crazy. I thought it was, out there. Alex Jones was just fucking, like some religious dude who was like all talking about like reptilians and shit like that. But that was more like David Icke, I found out. But I mean, like I'm not really religious. I'm kind of like agnostic in that respects. But a lot of the stuff that he's talking about is true. Like he's been talking about martial law for a long period of time, and like a lot of people are saying, oh, well, he's taken the side of Trump, but I've been watching InfoWars for the past, actually, I've been watching them daily pretty much for years now. But the last year, they've actually been calling out Trump a lot more, because, Trump's been going more globalist. He's been, like the thing about this too is that, unfortunately, Trump, he's a boomer, so he doesn't understand this whole internet censorship thing as much as a lot of people that are blowing the whistle on it. I mean, Project Veritas, they showed Twitter and Facebook. They had people who are actively censoring people at the time when they said in Congress, lying through their fucking teeth, that they weren't censoring conservatives or Republicans or any of that stuff. And the thing is, they were actually censoring people who were like more left-leaning, like left libertarians or left anarcho-communists, and people who are more into like still on the left side of social issues, but are against authoritarianism, or are against the mainstream media, just complete propagandization of the public. Those people were getting, censored too. And, Trump's dropped the ball on that. And that's one of the things that I have a serious problem with him. But I mean, what, you try to compare him to Trudeau? Trudeau is so far into the globalist, agenda. Every time they have a G7 or G8 meeting, he's there like, look at my pink socks. I had these custom made. Oh, do you like my socks? Oh, he doesn't give a shit about being a fucking leader. He's such a bitch boy, it's not even funny. He's got no balls. I believe he's probably the fucking son of Castro. Margaret Trudeau was the biggest hoe bag in the fucking planet. I think it was kind of interesting, because if you look at the way that the interviews that the media had with, I think this is why we should go back and actually think about it. Dan Dix from Press for Truth did a really good video where he showed way back in the day, back during the FLQ crisis, when they had a reporter talking to Trudeau Sr. And they asked him, like, how far are you willing to go, are you with this, martial law plan? And, he just laughed and he said, well, watch me. That was his line, just to show how authoritarian he could go. And now we're seeing his son play out the apple not falling too far from the fucking tree globalist scenario. A lot of people talk about how Trudeau, made the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which, yeah, okay, understandably is a good thing for Canadians, for individual rights and responsibilities and freedoms, but at the same time, it doesn't give us the same protections as the First Amendment protections in the United States would, for example. We have the right to free speech up to the point where it offends somebody, because God forbid we make the carnal sin of Canadians of being a little bit, unapologetic, being a little bit, ballsy, I'm sorry, but we didn't in World War fucking One, when we went on Passchendaele, when we fought the fucking Germans, we didn't just roll over to them and say, oh, well, these German people aren't that bad, they're just in the same situation as us, maybe we shouldn't fight that fucking hard. No, we fought our fucking balls off. We fucking were sacrificed in fucking the Dieppe raid, for Christ's sakes, in World War II. But do you see Canadians bitch about that? Did you see the armored? No. They did their fucking job. They watched their buddies die face down in the fucking muck. And this is what pisses me off about these fucking millennials now against this whole globalism bullshit. This whole new age globalism's wonderful. Brexit, they're so evil and racist. Blah, 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 blah. Back in World War II, we had an entire generation that was bombed with fucking V-2 rockets because Hitler thought that if he fucking caused that much destruction, then the people would lie down and be like, okay, we can't fight this anymore. We're done fighting. We're sick of it. But no, the bombing of the fucking people in Britain made the resolve so strong that they were ready to fight. That was their culture. They accepted it. They knew it was a fucking battle to the death. They all wanted fucking Hitler's skull on the fucking mantle of their fireplace at that point. It was fucking personal. And this is what pisses me off is, nowadays, it's okay to give your entire country and up to, some unelected foreign dictator, some EU fucking parliament that doesn't let you make your own fucking laws. And when you do try to, say, okay, enough's enough, we want out of this, they keep saying, oh no, you have to, what you want in your government doesn't matter. You have to keep voting again. Vote again, Italy. Vote again, Spain. Vote again, Greece. They will not let those countries have democratic rule. And that's fascism. That is the government, teaming up completely with corporations and making it so that the regulation is so heavy that they control everything and just destroy the entire free market. And what remnants of a free market we actually have out there, because let's be honest, the market that we have now, the capitalist system, is crony capitalism. In a free market, Adam Smith economy, we don't bail out fucking failures. We don't have assholes like Eric Holder that say, oh, we can't prosecute you HSBC because they're too big to fucking fail. No, they fucking fail. So we put in another company that, won't be as corrupt, won't fucking, take advantage of the market and manipulate and use all these massive wash trades that they have there, which is pretty much what the economy was to begin with. I have to say, I've always supported Trump up until now because he, the way that he did make the economy, he pretty much. It was more the way that he turned on the energy sector in the States again. Because Obama, his own quotes, he said, if a coal plant wants to open up, well, they're more than welcome to, but they're not going to be able to stay in business because of all the regulations that I have on it. And, everyone's talking, oh, coal. And they think, like these old 1950s mental pictures of these giant smokestacks and nobody can breathe and the fog is so thick that we're all going to die. Well, they don't realize that modern fucking coal plants have coal scrubbers on there that take 98 fucking % of the goddamn fucking pollution out there. And they take it and they put those chemicals in for tarring roofs, for all kinds of stuff that they could use. So I think it's pretty fucking funny how we're supposed to use like solar panel and wind power, the stuff that costs like a shit ton of chemicals and like dirty fucking elements to make these solar panels to begin with. All the steel and the freaking carbon that it takes to produce these giant ass windmills that only last a certain amount of time, and then because of the metal that they use for the alloys in it, they're not even able to like recycle the metal for the freaking. So they just take these like the pieces that like fly off and they replace them with more freaking. It's just a self-indulgent, just an Ouroboros of of just epic proportions, of just a useless exercise in futility when it comes to and the thing is, I've actually, like, I'm not against new energy or like sustainable forms of energy and stuff like that, but I want it to be reliable and cost effective to the point where it doesn't make it so that we're choosing, for people, to die pretty much, because the fucking price of energy is so fucking high that they are wondering, am I gonna, pay my fucking hydro bill, or am I gonna get food for my fucking kids this month? And Canada, we've been fucked up the ass so hardcore with taxes. We're almost as bad as the UK, aside that we don't have like the TV tax and bullshit stuff like that, but we have like 300% of GDP, the household income. We're so far in debt. Half of Canadian households are in debt. It's ridiculous how much we are getting screwed over here for energy rates, and I've looked into like renewable energies. I was writing for Earth Pages for a good couple months, pretty much, and I was doing this. I spent a lot of time just doing an investigative research into new forms of energy, or even better forms. And we actually, there's better forms of wind turbines out there, but the thing is, the main companies that are making the steel windmills, those versions of it, they're the ones that are getting all the contracts. They're not going for the ones that are, there's like a type of wind tunnel where it's like it's a wide base, and it doesn't even cost as much to have as a metal, like a steel turbine. And it's pretty much, if you put them on top of the hills, knowing the way that the wind blows, it has like a wide opening that when the wind goes up, it actually goes through like this cylindrical kind of where like the turbine is and whatnot, and it kind of like speeds up the I guess like the flow of the wind, and it actually has a lot better output than the steel turbines. You don't need to back it up with an electrical power station in case you don't get that much wind and stuff like that, because the output of it is a lot better than what the energy that it takes to actually use because there's still like some part of the energy that gets taken from the steel windmill that gets put into the actual system of the steel windmills. This one doesn't have any kind of like loss in power reduction that way, and it has like a lot better. Like they've done experiments with it, and they've tested it out in different countries or whatnot. I think it was Switzerland that was doing it, and they were actually getting a lot of. I think it was like Sweden came up with a variation of it too. There's also like other ones too that have like these little like wind chimes that have like turbines on it for like trees that can be used as like an artistic kind of concept for wind power, and like those ones are a little bit more pricier and obviously don't have the kind of power generation for like the turbine that you can get through the other thing I was talking about for the wind turbine that has like the kind of ground based system where it takes air and then it like puts it down to a very small space so that it speeds it up and then uses the turbine to turn it that way. So we don't see those kind of things being if you really look into the green energy business, a lot of it runs on government subsidies, a lot of it runs on nepotism, and a lot of it is pretty much people like Al Gore that say that we need to the time is now, we need to invest in green research and energy development and all that stuff. And it's like, yeah, okay, I understand like the need and the desire for that to have, to get away from the coal-based, carbon-based system that we have. But I mean, if you look at coal, I think like 100 years ago, the first Model T versions that they had, there was an electrical version and there was a gas-powered motor of the Model T. And believe it or not, the electrical version was actually much more actually sought out for the Model T than the gas one, because the gas one had this crank system in there. And every now and then you'd get these little kickbacks of it that would make these god-awful noises. And people just really did not like the idea of it, and also the fact that the electrical Model Ts had less parts in there, which required ergo less maintenance. But they purposely shut down that because they knew the fact that they had a system where they needed like the transmission and all the other stuff that they needed for the gas aspect of it. Then they could make more of a money off of the parts system, have more, so they scrapped the electrical model and went with the gas model, and we've been stuck with that pretty much ever since. I mean, even the electrical models now, the battery that they've chose to have for a lot of these ones only make it so that the car's life is maybe 10 years in total. Like, nobody's going to want to have a vehicle where you can't use, like, most people want a vehicle that they can either resell or that they know is going to last, like, who wants to pay for a Tesla? And the funny thing about it is that they have all these like electrical charge systems that the taxpayers have paid for here in Ontario, and nobody fucking uses them. Less than 1 or 2% of overall cars that are bought each year are electric or hybrid, and that's even with the government subsidies. And now that they had Doug Ford that took away a lot of those government subsidies, what did Elon Musk do? He fucking sued the province of Ontario because he wasn't getting as much profits. He was using the bullshit NAFTA fucking laws that were still in place to freaking go after Ontario for everything from I guess the tax credits that they'd received from the bullshit what was it, that they did the emissions test thing each year. Well, if you had a hybrid car, you wouldn't have to do the emissions test. Or if you had an electric car, you wouldn't have to do the emissions test. And then another fucking thing about it was that you would also get a tax subsidy every year that you could claim. Well, they got rid of that. And now, Elon Musk, what did he do with his failing Tesla, motors? He sued us. And that's the funny thing, is that it's a company that if you try to buy a Tesla car, completely new, you're waiting at least 2 to 3 years to get that. They've had such a backlog with and then also the fact that they say that their cars are unhackable. Well, they've had many versions of their cars that have been proven to be hacked. Also, what else? Oh, yeah, and their wonderful battery systems that keep exploding. They've had many different cases of Teslas, as much as the media tries to... the local media will report on it. In fact, they had one guy who... He was this wonderful, environmentalist, eco-friendly guy, and he's like, you know what? I'm just so sick of all these gas-guzzling, SUVs and stuff that this is his actual Facebook blogs and stuff that he was doing. Of course, he had to buy the electric car, but he couldn't, get the smug-assery, that comes with buying an electric car off of there to make him, because he had to buy it to make him feel better than the rest of the fucking planet. So what happens? He's going for a nice little stroll in his car, and all of a sudden there's some sort of electrical glitch in his vehicle, and so he starts his brake system failed, and he ended up smashing into a fucking wall, and then the batteries burst into fire, and because of the way that they make like the windows and stuff, with all the electrical systems in there, it's not like he could just, with an old car, just hit like the fucking unlock thing and then get the hell out of there. No, the way that the electrical systems got damaged, it completely stuck him inside his cars with these almost bulletproof fucking glass windows, and he had absolutely no way of getting out, and he fucking burned to death. So I mean, at least he got to feel smug about himself for about, a couple months before he fucking burned to death. I'm sure his fucking family misses him. So this is why I'm kind of pissed off with this whole bullshit electrical fucking switch to all the useless forms of crap they're trying to push for these green energy credits. What is it? Look at the offset program that they're trying to push as this wonderful thing. Russia, Ukraine, India, China, they've all completely manipulated it and taken advantage of the offset programs. They've taken people's money for these little guilt indulgences that they pay for being white. Because let's be honest, nobody really gives a shit about the government or the people's aspect of climate change in countries that aren't fucking white. Oh, of course, they'll care about climate change in the context of, look what these Western white people are doing, and their actions are causing damage to our country. Boo hoo hoo. Meanwhile, India and China are fucking polluting fucking all kinds of shit they're dumping into the fucking oceans. They have complete toxic rivers. India burns its fucking dead and lets fucking toxic fucking diseases float in the goddamn river. You know, like, they'll go in there and shit and bathe at the same time, and then people down the fucking river will take a nice thing out and drink from the river of life. So, I mean, let's be honest. When it comes to, you know, being equal about the condemnation of pollution and fucking who's causing the real problems to the environment on this fucking planet. But no, Greta Thunberg makes you feel, how dare you for saying anything against that wonderful UN agenda. We need the politicians up against the wall. That's exactly what she said. But then, of course, she had to come out and say, oh, I apologize for that. That's not what I mean. I mean, they must go up against the wall so we can play with them. Like, come on. As if, like, the answer to, like, all this UN agenda, you know, they keep saying the answer to everything is more global communism and giving up your freedoms and your privacy. I think that's bullshit. And so, I guess I've kind of been ranting right now for the last little bit, but I have to say, you know, I'm going to kind of leave it at there right now because I kind of want to see how this plays out. But one thing is for sure, and that you can bet on, you know, like, don't feel crazy for, you know, asking questions or thinking, hey, maybe this did this come from the, you know, the biological containment facility in Wuhan? Because let's be honest with you, like, Fort Detrick, you know, even in the U.S., with all of the you know, money that they spend for the, you know, military, industrial, and biological big pharma complex there in that country, they still, you know, every now and then they have containment issues. Like, there was times where they mailed anthrax by accident to, like, some dude. There's been all kinds of different mistakes that they've made, and, you know, it's up to us to be like, okay, let's do everything we can as a collectivized, you know, like, if we're going to use collectivism, let's make sure that we use collectivism to make sure that we're not getting killed by, like, fucking weapon design, you know, designed things in labs or whatnot. Let's put more pressure on them so that, like, we either have more oversight so that we don't have things like this happen, because, you know, like, why isn't the media holding China accountable? This should be right now. The question shouldn't be about, you know, shutting down everything, because, I mean, the shutdown occurs originally when the virus becomes a problem. Like, China should have done this properly without, you know, going after people that are talking about the thing as their main concern, and going after people who are more infected with the virus to begin with, and make it more of a concern. Shut things down there at that time. That would have been the best chance to put, you know, to put a corner in on this to make sure that it doesn't kill as many people. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case, because we have, you know, the Chinese Communist government, which is more about, you know, the thing about communism and socialism is that you get these collectivized authoritarian assholes that use this, like, bullshit, oh, I'm so moral and I virtue signal, so we have to have more leftist causes, and you're just mean, and fiscal responsibility, what is even that? Magic monetary theory all the way. Like, all these idiots that don't understand a fucking, you know, thing about economics don't understand the fact that the more money that you print, the less it's worth. But, you know, we just keep printing it out and stealing it from people through, you know, through pretty much a means of force. And overtaxation is theft. I mean, I do believe you need to have a basic state, like I've said before many different times. I mean, I would like to think that we wouldn't need something like that. I've looked at the voluntarists, I've looked at minarchists, I've looked at people who are anarcho-capitalists, anarcho-communists, you know, like, all the different things that they've looked at, like, they're you know, talking about there for, like, more of a leftist kind of anti-authoritarian, libertarianist kind of, like, you know, non-state ideas, you know, like, I would like to have something like that. I'd like to try to experiment with what kind of a world that would be like. But the thing is, most people are still stuck to that left-right authoritative kind of paradigm. And so, I mean, you have to have a realization that, like, I believe in having the basic minimalist skeleton kind of aspects of the state. You know, having the protections in there to make sure that we can still, you know, that we're not favoring big corporations over the little guys. But let's look on the left and the right. They, you know, both main parties in the States, both main parties here in Canada are all about corporate welfare, are all about authoritarianism as opposed to free market individualism and personal, you know, entrepreneurship. They don't have that here in Canada. And in the States, it's like they've just practically shut down a lot of independent businesses. This bailout that they're talking about in the States, for example, that the Pelosi has passed with both, thumbs up from both the Republican and the Democrats, are making it so that these bailouts are only being given to big corporations. Like anyone who has a small, under 20 people or under 50 people, I believe, I think it was like 20 to 30, I think, those people are pretty much, they have to pay for their employees' medical time. They have to give them at least some sort of plan through either medical or, so that's putting more added costs onto individual, owners and entrepreneurs, which is 90% of the American economy is private businesses and people that are that have picked themselves up by their own bootstraps and have made their own companies and is there a lot of corruption? Is there a lot of cronyism in the States, in the U.S. Form of capitalism? Fuck yeah, of course it is. And I mean, the answer isn't to go in with the people's revolution of a bunch of people that, have never worked a day in their fucking lives and don't know what it's like to fucking run a business, to take over everything and make every single productive person, like the evil, monopoly man that must be, who cares about their rights or their, or the sweat of their brow, who gives a shit about them because, they might have said something or they might have done something that, might have taken advantage of something before. So we have to destroy the entire fucking system and put in, more authoritarian fucking Orwellian douchebags to lead things, but they're doing it from a moral fascism? No. Those people aren't the ones that are going to rule everything. Look what happened when Mao took power. And every single factory owner or person who ever, kept the community economically going, through hiring, maybe he may not have paid the workers the best amount, the $15, Bernie wage that even he doesn't pay his own fucking staffers that he got criticized for. These leftists, try to maintain to their own unattainable standards that they can't fucking reach. Oh my God, it pisses me off. And we have to, we're going to let these people, like Bernie, who never worked a real fucking day in his life, all these socialist and communist millennials that think that they're going to get everything fucking paid for. And hey, there is somewhat of an economic argument to be made off of the way that the boomers have invested into real estate and blown that bubble up to the point where they are going to offset us all with a bunch of debt when that bubble pops. Here we are thinking that Canada's excuse to the housing bubble is to bring in more freaking economic migrants. And what they do, they are people that come over here with money that buy up real estate. And took Toronto, for example. Toronto's became a total hellhole now because we brung in all these, Toronto is at the point now where the only people that are really there now are people that they're either bringing in or that come here to Canada with money to invest. And hey, I have no problems with let's say Pizza, for example, the East Indian, way back when I was in high school and I was working back in the 2007, 2008 time before the, the big economic bubble bursted there for a bit. But, as much as people criticize Harper, he did bail out the Canadian mortgages and housing sector there, I think about $70 billion, which is pretty much because we've got 10th the population and the economy that the States has, it's kind of like the same bailout that Obama did. And I criticized Obama for the bailout that he gave to the banks after he went on this giant thing coming in being like, hey, look, I back in the day, I was convinced by the whole con. I saw Obama saying hey, look, we had a Bush, we need to get out of, we need to get the troops out of Iraq. We need to think of ways to, not be so interventionist and all this stuff. And his rhetoric, he talked a big game, talked about, putting in controls back in the economy that'll not give the big businesses these giant loopholes and stuff, and talking about all this, talking about how he's going to hold Wall Street accountable and everything, and then he turns around and bails them out, and then he goes around and starts attacking Libya and Syria. There's more slavery in the world thanks to Obama now because of what he did in Libya. There have people now, they have fucking Boko Haram and fucking Al-Qaeda affiliated groups selling black people on fucking trading blocks there now because it's completely collapsed there. So, I mean, we're supposed to believe that Obama did nothing wrong. Like, he didn't bomb Syria. He didn't bomb Libya. You know, like, he didn't, you know, Hillary Clinton didn't order a stand down in Benghazi, which she fucking did. You know? But then she goes and say, oh, it was all because some guy on YouTube made some obscure Innocence of Muslims video that nobody fucking watched. Like, come on. It's total bullshit. So, I mean, anyways, I'm going to stop ranting because I could go on for bloody hours just going off on all the crazy globalist bullshit that I see out there. So I have to say, I'm watching Alex Jones, and he's having people on that are, you know, that have correctly, you know, have different perspectives that are talking about, you know, the actual aspects, the true infection rates, the fact that this came from, you know, like the coincidence that the market just happens to be 900 feet away from like Wuhan's like main biological 4 level containment facility. You know, that's just a coincidence, you know. And the fact that like China lied through their teeth many times for many months, and now all of a sudden we're supposed to be like, oh, everything that they're saying is completely true. You know, like, everyone's gone back to work now, and China's all like, how come we weren't even allowed to see what they were doing to the Chinese people on Western media? Like, there was a complete and utter just radio silence on, you know, pretty much the Chinese government welding their people into apartment buildings to die. Pretty much them putting journalists that were and doctors that were speaking out about this, either charging them with a crime or what they had to like do public apologies and stuff like that. And the ones that didn't, the ones that took it seriously, well, they just disappeared. There's journalists that were talking about it that all they wanted was just a little bit of accountability, just a little bit of the government to be like, okay, what we're actually doing right now. You know, like, this is a bad virus, we're doing everything we can, but, you know, our resources are limited. That's all they had to say. You know, but instead, the Chinese government put their iron frickin' fist down and arrested anybody that said anything about it. They hid the cases for a long period of time until the point where they tried to say, oh, we've got it contained. But then all of a sudden it broke out in South Korea and exploded and went all over the world. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, you know, sorry about that. Oopsie. It's okay, though. The media won't call us on it. Why? Because as soon as CTV or CBC or Global or MSNBC or CNN go to commercial, they got those wonderful little Huawei commercials with those little colorful little freaking kids and all the awesome like camera angles and the quality of the pixels and all that shit. That's what we give a shit about. So, I don't know, it's all a bunch of bullshit to me, but at the same time, it looks like they could be taking something that's, you know, a little bit maybe dangerous and just blowing it completely out of proportion. And, you know, I think that they're trying to do this as a last bid kind of gasping from the kind of UN globalist agenda, because what? They're losing confidence in the European Union. They're losing confidence in globalism. They're losing confidence in open borders when people are seeing how it's affecting their wages by going, you know, their wages going down, and it's hard for them to find jobs for their you know, to keep their family fed. You know, and we're seeing it here a lot in Canada. And what I was talking about before with Toronto, for example, sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent there, was back in the 80s, Toronto was a completely middle-class city. Like, it was working middle-class Canadians. But then they drove up the freaking, the boomers drove up the price of pretty much property values. And then they brought in all this mass immigration, so people came into the market and made it harder for Canadians that were working, you know, middle-class jobs and whatnot. They lowered the wages. They made it so that the inflation has gone up, even though, because of the petrodollar, we've managed to back it with deflationary measures, like, take, for example, oil. Like, right now, this is, you know, great for a lot of people that want to travel and stuff, and great for transportation, but it's bad for Canadians. It's bad for people who are that rely on higher kind of oil oil prices, hey, that's the reason why we have supply management for our dairy, for our poultry, for even our fucking telecommunications. And I'm sorry, but those assholes don't need protection, all right? But our Canadian fucking communist government that says it's socialist but acts a whole lot more like a watermelon with that green veneer on the outside but the red fucking inner. So I'm getting really sick of all the bullshit that they're trying to put by shutting down the economy. I mean, like, okay, this virus right now, unless it mutates, unless it gets worse, and unfortunately it's serious for older people, and that's a horrible thing to see people die. But I mean, at the same time, it's like if we were shut down the entire world because of a flu. It's ridiculous. Because the effects of having an economic depression, the last economic depression killed 5 to 6 million people. I'm sorry, but that's a lot worse of a fucking death total. Like that took years to get out of. And all of the FDR, the chicken in every pot, the old deals that they had over, that they tried to put out there to put, to feed people were horrible failures. It's like the real way of getting people out was pretty much through like lower taxes, deregulation, putting more controls on the Federal Reserve. Because I mean, Ben Bernanke in 2000. See, I'm going on. Like I said, it's been a long time. Me, usually my videos when I post these things are gonna go on for about an hour or two. So for anybody that actually listens to my videos, as long as you do on my channel, man, you guys need definitely a medal there. But Ben Bernanke in like 2000s came out and admitted that it was the Federal Reserve from the 1913 the Federal Reserve Act that they put in there when Congress was they passed it when Congress was on Christmas break, and they made the Federal Reserve, and they admitted that they're the ones that pretty much gave out so much money when they were enacted that they came the Roaring 20s, and there was this huge like explosion of people that were making these loans where they would have to they'd get like a ridiculous amount of money, and that they were able to use their assets that were completely overvalued in a lot of cases as collateral. But the only way that they would get screwed over is that there was a little bit of a kind of a clause in the loan where that they had to, at any point, they would have up to 48 hours if the bank were to ask them for collateral. So like the loans that they took out like thousands and millions of dollars, and the inflation kind of became a thing back then between like 1930 and the 1913 to the 1930s, sorry. And the inflationary spiral and the amount of debt that the U.S. was owing to its banks and to itself was actually going up. There used to be a time where they had, so that the government could just print out money and then pay that money back to the government, and that's a way that they would keep the inflation from getting too crazy. But it got to the point where they had so many of these individual banks, and there was a lot of currency that was used, and some of these banks were only allowed to operate in certain areas because they didn't have the capabilities to operate on a national scale. So there was many times you'd had in like the 1900s to the 1913s, there was a couple of different times where the banks would fail, and there would be a run on the banks for individual small banks, and so that became as like the excuse of why they needed a centralized currency. But I mean, if you go back as far as to Abraham Lincoln, when he made the greenbacks, that was actually a currency that he was able to still like practically fund a war, but still have a stable economic currency. So it can be done. It's just that we have a lot of inflationary kind of measures. And back in the 1913s, there was a lot of robber barons, like the J.P. Morgans, the Paul, the Warburton brothers, for example. A lot of people that go into the conspiracy circles will talk about the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds. And if you look at the Creature from Jekyll Island, that's a great book. I highly recommend people to read, where it explains about how they met secretly to form financial plans for the 1913 Federal Reserve Act. And at the time, they had Woodrow Wilson, who was the president that they actually funded. And he was pretty much their inside man. And Woodrow Wilson, after passing the Federal Reserve Act, before the end of his term, of his presidency, he actually admitted that he was completely bought by those interests, and went on record and said that he completely regretted being pretty much their puppet. So they got their 1913 Federal Reserve Act, and they've been able to pretty much control everything from interest rates, from the monetary supply to the amount of money that they print, and it's ridiculous how much power they really have over us all. I mean, the fact that this world is $300 trillion supposedly in debt to private banks, and it's funny because they don't have to put anything up aside from either assets that they already have, or they're allowed to pretty much just print up money on a computer, and they said, "Oh, all right, we'll just print this into our little screen here. $20,000 we're gonna lend you out." Like, they don't have that $20,000 in the bank at that moment in time. They only have maybe about 3% of all the money in like the States or Canada is actually in the banks. Most of it is electronic, digital nowadays, because that's how they can do it. That's how they manipulate this whole, not having to have principal, a certain like amount of money in the bank that they can loan out with this whole fractional reserve lending. It's a huge thing to get into economically. It's a total clusterfuck when you think about it. And it makes it so that they can just print up a couple of, they can just do 10 seconds of typing on a computer. And then when that person's paying back the loan that this person has just typed up out of thin air, that person is spending 30 years of their hard-earned fucking money, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, maybe more, maybe less, they're backing that money up that they have to pay back with interest with the sweat of their brow. And that's the fucking problem with the economic system and the banking system, is that there's so many different ways that they use that to take away the fact that there's really no accountability for the banks. Like, there used to be a time where they had to have a gold standard so that the money that they lent out was at least representative to a fractional percent of what the government and what the banks actually had in store for value. So, I mean, that's where the problem is going after the cronyism in capitalism, is making it more free market, making it so that, the regular local person, who wants to have a job and wants to, improve his community can do it without heavy regulation that other businesses are allowed to operate without having any problems. I mean, take Amazon, for example. How is anyone able to compete when it comes to a mom and pop delivery system where they have to pay a couple dollars extra on shipping costs, but Amazon gets federal freaking supplements from the taxpayer? So every couple of dollars of every Amazon order is paid for by the taxpayer. Where's the fairness for the people who are trying to get by locally? It's not there. And so I think we need to open that up and make it more free and keep the skeletal systems in place of capitalism, as opposed to putting in this whole Marxist Orwellian hellhole. I mean, why would we let communists in charge of things? They've killed more people in history than the freaking fascists did. And I mean, I'm not saying we need to be fascists, I don't like that either. I want more anti-authoritarian economic and political measures in there. I want more free speech. I want more ideas so that we can decide which ones are fucking horrible and which ones don't work. Marxism. Because eventually you run out of other people's money when it comes to Marxism, socialism, and communism. I mean, even if you want to go Trotskyism, which is still, at least a little bit more towards private ownership, that still fails in the long run. So, I mean, it's definitely been interesting how I see a lot of younger people who think that, the government should pay for everything, or, that everything should be given, this whole universal basic income, which is now being forced down people's throats because, it may work as if you're trying to supplement something like an impact economically, but it's not good to be used as your, basic, continual economic freaking policy. Oh, my God. But anyways, enough of me ranting. I'm going to leave it there. And like I said, thank you very much for listening to me rant. And oh shit, my camera's kind of gone there, so you probably just see the top of my head from all the ranting I was doing there. But anyways, thanks everybody for listening to me, and I'll make another video probably, I don't know, in a couple weeks or whatnot. I kind of want to see how this plays out first, so I don't know. I mean, I was smart enough, as you can see over here. I got my food supply. I got like, that over there, that's like 30 years storable food, so that's good. I've got not like months and months, but I've got about like maybe a month if I have to like, stretch it out. But I'm gonna be like trying to save more food and stuff like that, just to be kind of like on the safe side regardless. And hey, it's not stupid to go out there and, as long as you're not buying up like ridiculous amounts of stuff that you're not really going to use in a reasonable emergency kind of situation. You have to be a little smart about it for sure. But I mean, hey, it's not stupid if you start looking at generators, for example. I mean, I've got water so that I know that, like, no matter what, I've got at least a good, well, the filter thing that I have right now is good for up to about 6,000 gallons, and it's like one of the best state-of-the-art gravity-fed filters, the Alexa Pure, which I mean, each replacement filter costs about like $150 to $180 Canadian, just because of the stupid freaking exchange rate and the delivery costs and stuff, because a lot of the stuff that you're getting is from the States. And the quality of the filter though is amazing, because like, you don't even really, like, you can take like water from the creek and put it through the filter, and it comes out completely pure. Obviously, the more you're using stuff like that, you kind of want to make sure you want to boil it to make sure that you're not killing your filter as much as you normally would. But it's really reliable. It's something that, worst case scenario, even though I've got like a filter in the house, for some reason it's one of those ones where it does a self-cleaning thing, but for some reason, even though we put the salt in there, it still doesn't taste like it's properly filtered. It's still got that little like kind of gross taste to it. So I mean, it's good to have a good water filter. It's good to prepare for, make sure that you do have some stuff. But people that go crazy and buy like one item like a year's supply, and they're broke and they're wondering why, or like they go out and buy like a 6-month can of supply of Chef Boyardee, and then like a couple of months go by, and like they don't hear anything from you in your house, and the CDC goes in there to check on you, and all of a sudden you're dead from farts. It's really not good to make sure you're stocking up on stuff that is probably not the best for you, or stuff that's really not going to make any sense, because then, like, unless the water system goes down on you, I mean, worst case scenario is you could always jump in the shower, even though it's kind of, it'll raise your water bill a little bit, but still it's not as expensive as, like, what would it be if you, like, spent, an entire $1,000 on toilet paper. So you kind of have to evaluate which is more of the important resource in kind of those situations. But I mean, people are getting to the point now where that's how it starts with panic buying. It starts with basic stuff that you at first think that you can kind of go without. Like, I can go without this or that for another couple days or whatnot. But what happens is it starts, the panic starts to set in, and what I'm seeing with the media, this whole kind of like, watch, hey everybody, let's all gather around the television set with popcorn and watch the death count go up. That kind of fear-mongering is exactly what's going to make people go out and buy more and more shit. Now, it's getting harder to find medical stuff. It's getting harder to find children's aspirin for, like, parents and their kids or whatnot, because parents are freaking out and buying everything they can too. And for me, I was smart enough to stock up before all this crazy shit happens. And the fact that I listen to Alex Jones, and the fact that I've supported him over the years financially, and I think his products are amazing. I'm probably going to buy some more Silver Bullet, because many times where I feel like I'm about to get sick and I get that little tickle in the back of my throat, I just put a couple drops in there. Never have a problem. My immune system's usually pretty good, considering I'm like disabled and kind of borderline diabetic. That's an amazing thing in my books. I also like their B12. Their B12 is really sweet, and it actually gives you a really noticeable energy kick. It's like I don't drink coffee, so when I do drink caffeine, I get wired. Like, I just drank a Pepsi earlier on. That's why I'm able to go at extent for this video and rant as much as I make up the points that I do, because I'm the kind of person where I boil it up, right? And when I see a lot of the farce that the news is pushing, like, listen, I can't go into details here, but my mom works at a hospital, and she's the cleaning lady, and so obviously I'm getting like the worst information that she's telling me about how like the hospital like cannot keep up with this at all. Like, we barely have enough beds as it is, from like having MRSA outbreaks and like all kinds of normal freaking diseases that kill old people to a lot larger and to a lot more infectious scale than what this virus is doing right now. But hey, it's a newbie, it's a rookie, give it time, we'll see how it plays out, right? For all those people out there that are missing sports right now, I figured I'd put a little reference in there for a lark. But it's we're gonna have to see just the fact that the hospital here, we're pretty much the only main hospital within a good 20-minute drive, and that's saying a lot because Southern Ontario is pretty populated compared to Northern Ontario, for example, or other countries. We've got a large area here, and we're starting to get cases, and the thing is, our hospital can't cope with it. We don't even have the resources to put people into quarantine. When we're having an external truck outside of the hospital, and like the hospital is like making it so that they've really limited any kind of like access to it whatsoever. And like the people that are being diagnosed with it are being sent elsewhere. So, what happens, that's okay for the first couple of cases here in Oxford County, but what happens when they start getting these tests, which, that's another thing we have to keep in mind here. It's taken us this long for the tests, a week ago they started becoming available in North America, when South Korea already tested almost 100,000 of their own people by the time that we're just starting to get it now? What's wrong with the CDC? Here they're these medical masterminds of these high-paid, these, over $100,000 salary, easy, scientists and biologists and doctors that are out there saying, oh yeah, we'll get on top of this coronavirus thing. We just have to come up with a vaccine. We're doing the best we can with the test until we come up with a vaccine. And I go to the Canadian, I'm ranting again, but hey, you know what? This might be a 2-hour long video, so you guys are just gonna have to bear with me. I don't do much content, but when I do, it goes big. So thank you to the 50 people that have subscribed to my channel. I'm sorry I have to torture you with my voice, but I'm just making these points that it's getting crazy that we have this authority out there that, they're talking about how bad this pandemic is, and then it takes you 3 to 5 days at the fastest to get results back, and they're just getting tests in. The first batch of tests that they sent out, the media never said that the first batch of the CDC tests that they sent out there, the World Health Organization, the tests they sent out there were completely faulty. They had so many false positives and false negatives that they couldn't be relied to, to maintain a basic scientific and medical standard. And the media didn't mention that at all. And that's what pisses me off about, and that's the reason why I've stopped watching. Maybe now they might start reporting on, I've noticed that AP, Reuters have said a few things about it, but now they've turned the whole thing to just saying, oh, well, no, we have to be just like China. China's the model of how we deal with this. Look at all the cases they don't have now, even though they fucking murder and censor their fucking people and make it so that they can't put out any, just getting videos outside of China right now is almost a mission impossible task, and most people in the West don't realize just how authoritative and how censored WeChat is there, and how censored just the internet in general in China is. It's almost, and then the people that do get the information out there, they get hunted down and then they fucking disappear. What is that? What we're gonna do here what's gonna happen if Trump really does go, okay, globalist, okay, World Health Organization, let's do the China model, let's shut down every single city and town in the country, which is what they're trying to do now, which apparently is the good thing to do. When's it going to stop? Are they going to start putting people into little cube vans and sending them to the little quarantine factories, like to the little place where they're, even if they get a false positive, or, instead of taking individual people, or, what they were doing was welding them into their own houses in apartment buildings and then leaving them? Like, it's one thing if you're going to quarantine them and then give them food, but there's plenty of reports of people that have been welded inside their freaking apartment buildings where they can't leave. They have people that are trying to, that are dying, falling off these balconies trying to get down, or being shot by the military police. There's plenty of videos out there. Mainstream media hasn't fucking reported on a goddamn fucking one of them, aside from maybe a seizure. I saw the one where the person had some seizures from the virus or whatnot. They showed on CNN. Why? Because when they put that in a little clip and they see the little seizure, the Asian dude seizuring, it makes people like, oh my god, I don't want to be that Asian person seizing. Oh no, CNN, tell me, what must I do for you to save us? It's so fucking bullshit, man. I'm so sick of it. And, anyways, like I said, I'm going to keep on ranting if I keep talking about that stuff, but it just pisses me off how, we're taking that authoritative kind of, if Trump ever did anything, starting to weld people, could you imagine if he goes to, freaking, Harlem and starts, going to, the project buildings and start welding their fucking apartments, shut? How long do you think it'll take before there's race riots in America and the Democrats declare it a fucking, civil war in the case of racial injustice? Come on. As if we're trying to think that Xi Jinping is and the globalists are taking this panic. They see it as an opportunity for them to be able to push these Orwellian social control mechanisms and economic control measures. I mean, we just, as much as I like Trump up until now, I'm sorry, but Trump is in my shit list right now. I like the fact that he's a badass. He's got no problem telling Hillary Clinton that she's a fucking criminal, because she was a criminal, is a criminal, and should be fucking prosecuted for the crimes that she's done, let alone all the people that have meant to testify that just happen to end up dead in some weird fucking suicide or some weird fucking plane crash or car accident where they get taken out by a train. It just so happens, Jeffrey Epstein, he totally killed himself in prison, even though they've done many tests to show that the stuff that he had there could possibly fucking, hang himself the way that he had there in a suicide watch shell. So, I mean, it just so happens that the guards were sleeping, and, there were different guards for that shift, and, the former roommate tried to kill him beforehand, but, it was hush-hush, nobody said anything about the media or whatnot. And Barr, who's supposed to be the third person that they put in there, Sessions couldn't do his fucking job, Whitaker couldn't do his fucking job, and they put Barr in there and he can't do his fucking job either. And what does he do? Oh yeah, it looks like a complete, Jeffrey Epstein, he gets a sweetheart fucking deal, where he was looking forward to getting out, he gave some bullshit testimony, and yeah, okay, so maybe he may have had to face some potential criminal procedures because of the Corey Feldman, believe it or not, actually had something to do with this. They passed a bill through Congress for people who have had sexual abuse, who have been abused, and sex trafficking, stuff like that. They opened up a 3-year window for people to go up against their accusers, and all of a sudden a bunch of people came out that were gonna go after Jeffrey Epstein in civil and criminal cases, because they had a certain time frame that was opened up for them to go because of the whole Weinstein, that's what he's being prosecuted under now, and all that stuff. These laws that pretty much came from people in Hollywood wanting more accountability for the sexual predation that was going on there. And so yeah, that may have been a tiny factor for Epstein, but I mean, the main things that he could have gone to jail for, anybody else, if they were doing operating a child sex trafficking ring on a fucking private island, they would be going to jail for a lot longer time. But it just so happens that the media won't talk about the fact that Mueller was watching the tapes and was using that island as a honey trap. You know, the MI6 was using it as a honey trap. The Mossad was using it as a honey trap. They were all working together with the Five Eyes thing and Jeffrey Epstein. And Jeffrey Epstein had these weird fucking, like, technocratic ties to people in Harvard and fucking, like, really prestigious like, and scientific communities. Like when they had the meeting of the super friends with Oprah Winfrey and Warren Buffett and what was it, freaking Bill Gates and all the wonderful social engineers, like in like the 2000s or whatnot. They had Jeffrey Epstein. That was the, like, he was part of that whole thing too, dealing with them, and like he ended up getting like a free $21 million mansion because he blackmailed some politician. Like, oh my god, it was ridiculous. If you really look into the amount of government involvement in the Jeffrey Epstein and just how they had the Clinton, like, you know, like people will say they tried to come out originally and tie Epstein to Trump. When, okay, Epstein may have had Trump's, like, business numbers and, like, you know, from, like, way back in the day. But, there were, like, Trump was pretty much, if you were involved in business and you were involved in politics, Trump, like, pretty much knew everybody. He was a big friend of people in the Democratic Party for the longest period of time before he started realizing that they were going too far communist, too far open borders, too far pro-China, and went Republican. Because all in all, you know, he is, you know, a capitalist who believes in, you know, as much as he, you know, says about free market principles and making your own way and stuff like that. And yeah, a lot of people will give him the criticism, well, he got $1 million to start his own business. But hey, look at how many people win the fucking lottery and they'll get multi-million-dollar payouts. And then within two years, they're fucking broke again. You know, you have to have, like, yeah, okay, he started off with a lot of money, but it comes in that, you know, capacity when they say you need money to make money. And I mean, the fact that he turned $1 million into, you know, at least $1 billion empire, you know, I mean, that's something that takes, you know, some dedication, hard work, and you know, like some oversight, you know, so you're not just blowing your money on every venture that comes, because there's a lot of people out there where they're just not good with money, or they don't have that drive or focus to keep, you know, going on a project. So, but anyways, what I'm kind of fearful about this is the fact that Trump at first was kind of said, oh, well, it doesn't look like this is a bad thing, even though at the same time he, like, you know, suspended flights from China and stuff, which was at first considered, oh, you're being racist and this is horrible, blah, 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 blah. But at the same time, what was it? At the same time, now we're like, it's a completely, like, you know, he was ahead of the game if you look at the way that they're censoring stopping travel now from I mean, in Canada really screwed it up. We just recently, like, what, today is yesterday, apparently stopped travel, you know, and they were putting all this stuff, the government, and we have Bill Blair, who is just a joke. Like, he was like the police chief of Toronto, and that guy did a lot of, like, questionable freaking things. And this is the same guy that spent most of his life busting people for marijuana offenses, and then as soon as weed became legal, he invested in Aurora. He bought stock in it. But you know what? I think it's kind of funny, because I'm sure he's probably sold it now, because they didn't make as much money as they thought they would on the market for legal cannabis. They made it so that the regulations, the prices were too expensive for people, and it's easier for people to get male weed that's grown either out in BC usually, because they've just got such a really great underground black market economy. When I was out there in BC, some of the best marijuana that I ever had out there when I was out there, and you know, they had this booming economy already, this black market economy, and now that they've allowed it so that people can send weed in the mail, even though technically you're not supposed to buy weed interprovincially, like you can't buy technically BC bud, like the legal stuff from there, and then have it sent to Ontario without having to pay like a ridiculous tax. It's like how they do it with the it's one of those things where socialist and communist countries try to do price controls, and yeah, it kind of works a little bit for people in there, but it also ultimately, like, it'll help out the business owner at the cost of the consumer. So we got to pay more, pretty much, or we can't get the access that we would have in a free market situation. And so the black market here in Canada for pot and cannabis is pretty much just undercutting them anyways, because they're not testing, like they're not checking the weed past provincial borders. It would cost Canada Post way too much money for that, and so now there's no questions asked when it comes to pot deliveries in the and I think that's actually kind of a good thing. I mean, I'm sure the government knows exactly that being the reason why they're getting their asses kicked. Another kind of like, the thing about the market is that you get apps like Weed Maps, for example. And anybody who's listening to what I'm saying right here, if you do partake in the Mary Jane, if you don't, that's cool, whatever. I mean, whatever floats your boat, everybody, to each their own, right? As long as you don't, like, it doesn't, like, completely, take over your life and your finances and stuff like that, if you can, still enjoy yourself, then I don't see the point, like, the problem in it. But, if anybody out there is interested, use Weed Maps, because they'll show you, like, local delivery. Usually they'll go right to your door, and they're decent people. They're just trying to make a profit, and their weed's actually higher quality THC and a lot cheaper. And they also are offering a lot more different variations. Let's say if you're not into the harsh, effect of smoking marijuana. If you like the vaping THC kind of experience, they offer the vape pens. There's a lot of different other things that they offer too. So, it's a market that's opened up here in Canada, even though it's ultimately screwing over the people in the government who have invested heavily into government pot, because they were under the assumption, Canadians are going to be able to buy legal pot. This is going to be great for them. But when they first started their business, they had a lot of problems. They hired people that weren't able to get the product to market properly. There was a lot of mold issues because they weren't properly curing it. And this is supposed to be like the government verified G14. Every batch of marijuana is like stringently tested with these $50,000 equipments to become a licensed producer, that these like Aurora and whatnot, and they like take like their own strains and patent it like some sort of Monsanto freaking like horrible company that wants to patent life, which is just something that I'm completely abhorrently against, because most people who smoke weed are, like, for long periods of time, are used to the international underground black market of strains. Let's say you want, like, a Purple Kush, or you want White Widow, or, you want, like, Pineapple Express, like, different types of strains that, like, High Times out there, continually promote, that people have used for long periods of time, and they know what those psychoactive and the terpenes, and I guess that's what terpentines. I'm not 100% sure about the specific of like the biological aspects of the THC strains and stuff, and obviously the indica sativas and the hybrids and stuff like that, I know, but going into like the specifics, there's definitely a lot more science involved in it. But what they're doing now is, and I noticed this too, because with my back being screwed up and like actually having, doctors with MRIs to back it up, that I'm not just like making it up that, my back is a little sore. No, I actually have discs in my spine that are fucked up, and it causes me a lot of pain to walk around a lot. I qualified for a medicinal marijuana card, so I went to London, Ontario, and I'm like 40 minutes away from it, so it just didn't make sense for me to continually go there every 3 months for a piss test, because I'm being used as a guinea pig, because the types of like weeds that they sell there isn't the stuff that we've normally been accustomed to. They have these like weird types of like names, and what creeps me out and what kind of threw me off overall of medicinal weed, I mean, I like the fact that they gave compassion pricing, so it was a little bit cheaper, but at the same time, some of the strains that I had were stronger, like noticeably stronger. I was like, okay, this does feel like the certain percentage that it's saying that it is. But I noticed that the way that the strains would react, I would get used to them pretty quickly, as opposed to other strains, which, you have a lower price, more availability of it, because some of the strains that they had there in the selection, I was really limited, because for some reason, when you bring the medical thing into it, and they're all like, for me, I've been smoking weed for a long period of time. Like, it's not just a medicinal thing. It's also been a recreational thing ever since I was in high school. It happened to be one of those things. I'm not a beer drinker as much. I mean, I can hold my liquor. The thing is, when I go out and get drunk, like, I can drink a lot, but then it costs me a shit ton. It's a lot easier for me just to buy weed, because I find it helps the nerves in my back or whatnot, because the sciatic nerve is the one that is, constantly causing me the amount of pain to where if I overdo it, I can barely fucking stand up. But I find for the price that I pay for it, I only use a little bit of it per day in comparison to what, like alcohol or other drugs out there. I mean, I was able, if I wanted to, because of the chronic severe spinal stenosis that I have, if I wanted, I could get like access to opiates whenever I wanted. But I did not want to get addicted to those kind of pain pills, because it causes just a whole bunch of dependency and problems in itself. I mean, I can go half a month without weed and it doesn't bug me. I don't feel like I want to, freaking rob my mom or my family or whatnot, or sell like a stereo or whatnot to get my next fix. Like, I never have that issue, and it's not really physically or mentally addictive for me at all. So, I mean, I just use it as kind of like a means for pain relief. And I mean, whether or not you use that for that, I mean, everybody's body's different, and everybody handles things differently, right? So, being a libertarian, I'm all for it, as long as you're doing it reasonably. And I mean, if you look at the ways that you can counter a black market, now if you do it right, like the thing about the Canada is, if they ever want to be really successful, I mean, yeah, okay, a lot of millennials and trendies and like people that like wouldn't buy it now that before now, but now that it's legal, are like trying it out. Like, they don't have a problem going to like because I went to Burlington and it was kind of a bit of a novelty. It was kind of an interesting experience. It was kind of like you're going to a place to buy weed legally, which is kind of cool, but then they're also like charging you twice the price for like the higher THC and stuff like that. And for my pain, I either need high CBD or high THC, because high THC is good for immediate pain. CBD obviously is more for long-term pain, but I find even high CBD strains, you're paying a lot for. They're charging almost the same price as high THC strains, which is ridiculous, because let's be honest, in the market of stonerage, for people that, most like the 80 to like, well, let's be honest, the 90%, 95% of people that are using marijuana are using it mostly because they want the THC psychoactive effects of it, not the CBD. Like, the fact that the CBD should be, at least a lot cheaper, because of the fact that it doesn't have any of the psychoactive ramifications of THC. So, but you still have to pay a ridiculous amount for that. So I'll go for the higher THC over the lower CBD, because even CBD they can't get really high percentages of in comparison to THC, just because of the way that the female plant breeds, pretty much. So just the way the THC is and the CBD grows, it's obviously you're going to get more THC strains than you're going to get CBD. I think there's Charlotte's Web. I've tried that before, and I actually noticed that was actually such a high CBD level, but I was only able to get that natural strain out in BC. I couldn't get it out here in with the medical stuff. When I asked them for it, it was all, their types of strains of weed is all like Bedrocan. It's all stuff that's named after like Tylenol, like Bedinol and like Butanol and like weird fucking names of shit that, isn't really like the types of strains that we're used to. These are like these new, like genetically modified and patent for the company. Nobody else can use our strain. Like, you have to call it blah, 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 blah. And it sounds like, there might be like another commercial 6 months down the road. Have you or a loved one used Bedinol well and suffered horrible consequences well? Come in. I'm just waiting for those commercials to come up for all those, because it just sounds like one of those sketchy fucking big pharmaceutical companies where they're trying to get people addicted to shit that's eventually gonna fucking make their heart fail on them or something. So yeah, I don't know. I'm just kind of interested in seeing how that goes. I don't think they're gonna. I mean, you can't. There was a Canadian libertarian, Bennett. He made a really good point, and it's kind of a joke where the Canadian government can't compete with Matt in apartment 5B, because Matt from apartment 5B has lower prices. Will every now and then maybe even roll you up a joint and smoke it with you. We'll have better customer service. We'll actually give a shit about the strains that you like, and we'll be like, hey, maybe you should try this one or whatnot. Oh, you're not feeling this well, this strain over here, like with all these established strains, when people know exactly what they usually do, whether or not because not every type of strain of weed just gets you baked. Like some of them are actually more for like that'll give you kind of like a better like say if you're trying to like do stuff in the day, like there'll be ones that won't like strains that will like get you baked, but you won't like at the same time you won't feel like that completely burnout kind of feeling. Like there's ones where they recommend it more for like the morning because it'll give you more of an energetic high. There's other ones that are geared more towards like to help people eat more. There's other ones that are like strains that are geared for people who with just like trying to have like certain types of pain. That just deals with that with CBD and also THC strains and stuff like that all affect pretty much your mood in different ways. So there's a lot of variability, and the thing about it too is that I noticed when you have like cheaper, more available, more known strains, it's easier for you to be like, okay, I'm going to try this one here, and then you try another strain. And if you've been used to like, let's say 2 or 3 strains that you've been smoking pretty regularly that are mostly known, then, you'll try another strain and it'll be like almost a completely different experience, and your body won't get as adjusted to it as if you were to like, I noticed with the medical weed, where you had a very limited amount of selection. You were limited by the doctor on how much THC level you could have, because it took me like 3 months to be able to, 9 months, because every 3 months I'd go see there, and it was 3 different times. 9 months for me to get to like 25% THC for the doctor to be okay with. And I was like, well, yeah, it's okay, but I'm used to, stuff that I can find from people where I know, or through weed maps where they say that their THC is 30% or higher. And when I smoke it, it feels like it's 30% higher. I have better pain management when I smoke the higher strains of THC from the weed maps or the black market supplier, as opposed to the highly overtaxed weed that you're paying for from like the legal sense, what you're paying more just to say, oh, I paid for this legally, as opposed to something that's been there for a long period of time, which I know I can, I have better selection, better choice. I know what they do. As opposed to when I was smoking the medical weed, I was only allowed to smoke like 1 or 2 strains. So when I'd smoke them for a while, I get used to it. So yeah, at first when I ran out of weed and I go there and reorder, for the first like, few weeks or whatnot, I'd have it and I'd be okay with it. But then I started to notice that I wasn't getting as buzzed, and that it wasn't really doing the medical effect as much, because my body, I've been smoking for so long, and I was out in BC smoking like amazing stuff when I was out there, everything from like hash to honey oil, you name it. And like like even there was like this like hash infused with opium that I tried once and swore I would never do again because it was such amazing body buzz. I was like, but that was like recreational, obviously. So I had more of a selection, and I just kind of found myself being more free market, more libertarian, more like right-leaning, anti-authoritarian libertarian. I definitely, was all for it. So I like the weed maps aspect of things. So I definitely agree that you're never going to be able to compete with Matt in apartment 5B. So, yeah, I'm going to leave it at there because this is going like a very long rant. So anyways, thanks a lot, guys. I'm actually going to end it this time because I know I've been trying to, that I go on to another tangent. But I mean, this is why I should probably start networking with more people. But I mean, there's so many different channels out there, and the thing about YouTube is that they're really cracking down hard on up-and-comers, so there's almost really no like incentive for me to want to like do this as like a serious kind of venture. So I just kind of like throw my things out there on YouTube and BitChute and Minds and all the other places that I can throw it out there that hopefully won't get censored, because there's plenty of people out there too, like I mean, whether or not you agree with I mean, like, it's always good to like look at different perspectives and stuff. And I used to be able to like look at leftist outlets, but like now it's like there's no truth in the left, absolutely no truth whatsoever. Like they might have a couple points, and but then they just completely demonize everyone as like the worst fucking people ever and alt-right or racist when they don't even know what a right-wing government would even consist of. A right-wing government wouldn't be Nazis, because the fascists were actually just like an international. There was the international fascists, which were the communists, and there's the national fascists, which were the pretty much the Nazis. If you look at the authoritarian ways that they had their control of pretty much of the economy, the means of production, fascists controlled the means of production, communists controlled the means of production, real right-wing individualist, entrepreneurial people who want decentralization, who want deregulation, are the ones that like a right-wing government or real right-winger would be some guy that would go around start taking out freaking stop signs and shit like that because it's products of the state. So people don't even realize the difference in like what right and left really is. They just see it as this like two-dimensional flat line of communist on one end, fascist on the other. And I'm not even saying fascism is a good thing. I'm anti-authoritarian. I don't want a fascist government and I don't want a communist government, but that's what we're sitting to get in a lot of cases. So the real answer out there is for people to realize that we need libertarian philosophy in politics. We need to trim the fat. We need to not have such we still need like enough to keep social measures in, because that's what libertarian is. Like it's fiscally leaning conservative, but it's also very socially liberal in a lot of respects. Like I don't really give a shit what people do behind closed doors in their bedrooms. That's not the place of the government to decide. At the same time, I also believe, and it's been shown before, that when you legalize a lot of drugs, like take weed, for example, unfortunately, it's led to the cartels adapting human trafficking as a more profitable enterprise, which is a sad thing. But if you look at it from like a term, or if you look at it from the context of prohibition, that is actually one of the best ways of making sure that you don't have such a black market with inferior products, stuff like that, is by legalizing marijuana. But when you think about like cocaine, harder drugs like that, as a libertarian, I understand the argument, but also you have to realize that in theory, the thing about libertarianism is that, and conservatism, is that they do kind of teach a lot of personal responsibility, but not everybody is personally responsible. In fact, it's an obvious fact that there's a lot of people that just don't really give a shit, or will, like, in any kind of scenario, when you have, like, any kind of situation where most people, common sense wise, would know how to act, there's always going to be a few people out there that are gonna fucking just go completely batshit crazy. And, like, not in the way where their arguments or, are really, like, thought of or whatnot, or, they're just pissed off. They just want something, and they don't want to have to do the work. They want someone else to do it. And that's the reason why, like, if you look at capitalism, if you look at a free market society, it has a natural way of telling, if people notice that a company is not trying hard, or they've lowered their quality, or they're not doing what they need to do, then people will look at other companies, or will look for better options, and those people will go out of business. They'll fail in their economic model, and then if that person wants to get another business, he's got to realize, or she got to realize what they did wrong, and then improve better, and they either fly by the seat of their pants, or sink like a fucking stone in the ocean. So that's how we weed out failure and incompetence, and we make sure that people are that actually are able to manage a company or whatnot, do get a little bit more money than the peons that are working there just to have a wage for themselves and just adding to the company. They always try to think that the whole Marxist ideology is that if you own a company, then you're exploiting your workers, which is bullshit. In an actual, like, okay, not the companies that are like to the point where they're like multi-trillion-dollar or billion-dollar companies that, no matter what kind of stupid shit they do, they get bailed out or whatnot. Like, those people who can afford it, they shouldn't be given the government incentives. They shouldn't be given the taxpayer dollars, and that's pretty much what I'm all about, like, let them fail. If they're going to get to the point where they're not willing to fix their business model to make it a productive, or, if they're not if they're not keeping their business going properly, then it's their own fucking fault. But no, instead we're supposed to, like, allow these communist systems and fascist systems where we're only allowed a couple of choices, and, like, everything that we do is monitored and sold for metadata, and I mean, if they're gonna mine you for all your information, they should at least pay you. Like, Facebook shouldn't just be free. They should, start paying the people a little bit of the money that they're getting from all the mining of your data. And the reason they wouldn't do that is because, obviously, one, they want as much profits as they can, and two, it costs a lot of money for the bandwidth. Let's take YouTube, which was subsidized by the government for many years before YouTube became popular, and before YouTube became profitable. And that was allowed to keep going, and obviously the culture accepted it because they got suckered into this ideology of, hey, look, you can broadcast your opinions, and the average person just in front of a camera can give their opinion, or do a daily vlog about their lives, or give people encouragement and create these wonderful, vibrant communities. And once they realized, oh shit, these people are making these vibrant communities, and they're actually saying things that the mainstream media doesn't want them to say, oh, we gotta shut that shit down faster than you can fucking take a shit at. So, I mean, that's just fucking ridiculous. So, they're, closing everything down. They're silencing opinion. And I just don't want to see this go down in an Orwellian, authoritarian kind of path. Because, I mean, how long is it going to go? I mean, right now we have, in the States, for example, a powder keg between the left and right. A civil war that could break off at any moment, a bloodless coup that has been, carried out against the president on 3 separate occasions. One, they tried to say he was mentally incompetent. Another one, they started to say he was a Russian agent who was meeting up in hotels and getting pissed on, paid for by a Russian informant who was paid for by the Democratic National fucking Party. But, we're not gonna, make any arrests there, Barr. Thanks for not doing your fucking job. That wasn't political at all. He had plenty of concerns, and he went on CNN and said, I have plenty of concerns, and I don't like the way this is going, and this, definitely wasn't the way that they were supposed to do things procedure through their, rubber stamp FISA fucking courts. They were spying on everyone in the Trump administration even before he ran officially. That's completely legal, apparently. We're not gonna, call out Strzok or Page or, Brennan or any of these fucking globalist assholes that he finally got out and removed, which I think is a good thing. The fact that Trump has removed so many globalist assholes from the entrenched establishment in itself is, hey, he's won the presidency in my respects, in that regards as best president in this fucking time, because none of the other ones did. In fact, all the other presidents, whether or not they were left or right, all decided to cater towards China. I mean, they gave him World Trade fucking Organization powers. They've given him special drawing rights now so that they can fucking directly counter the U.S. petrodollar and the U.S. as the reserve currency in other countries when it comes to dealing business. They came out with a BRICS bank, and now they're like completely competing with the IMF and the World Bank, which in a certain way is kind of good, because then they don't have this like monopolization on the West globalists compared to the East globalists. So it's kind of interesting to see how that's playing out right now. But I mean, I'm not saying the other one's better. They're both authoritarian, financial regimes that, instead of like going into Africa and being like, oh shit, there's these two people that are at each other's throat, let's get the UN and NATO in there to make sure that we calm down both sides and give them incentives so that we can make peace and that they can get along with each other. Nope. What the IMF does and the World Bank, what they do is they'll be like, oh, there's two different factions here in this civil war. Well, we're gonna back this guy and give him a giant fucking loan that he can't pay back at high interest rates, so he's gonna have to sell all the fucking resources after he fucking kills this guy. And that guy doesn't give a shit. He doesn't give a damn about paying them or down the road about paying them. He's immediately thinking about, how am I going to kill this guy and cement power in fucking the region that I want, you know? And so, yeah, okay, he may either win. Most of the times when the IMF and the World Bank read a book called Confessions of an Economic Hitman by John Perkins, or watch the Four Horsemen documentary that's available online on YouTube for, I don't know how much longer it's going to be available for, but you know, watch that, and they have people out there who admitted, like, I was, you know, the UN, NATO, all these, IMF, World Bank, I was employed with these guys to pretty much fund dictators, get the power of that dictator running the country, and then when that dictator can't pay the money back at the high interest rates that they don't charge anyone else except those African nations because of all those wonderful Moody's ratings about, you know, all the war that could happen and break out, which makes it so that the governments have to pay back all their bankers more money at higher interest rates, and they have no problem taking that money from the treasury of the people, or they have no problem ultimately being like, well, I can't pay it. So what happens? The IMF's like, oh, we'll take that power electric dam there. We'll take we'll take any kind of energy production companies where they can get a kickback. You know, everything from hydropower to you name it. You know, to the electricity grid. They're making money off of it, siphoning money off of the countries and putting people into abject fucking horrid poverty. And what does that do? That creates this constant cycle of people in that country that are fed up with the globalism or the puppet that's in charge, and so then another person rises up, and then it becomes a fight, and instead of the UN doing their fucking job and putting both parties, you know, and making incentives to stop them from killing each other, they're practically just funding one side and being like, oh, well, these people are now in power. I mean, look at the Congo, that whole situation. Enough said. You know? Oh my god. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. I know I've said this many times, but I just keep ranting. So, alright guys. I'll talk to you later. Peace.